How would you feel if, in a moment of generosity, you discovered a deep connection with someone who seemed like a complete stranger? That was the question that haunted me that cold Christmas night when I decided to buy dinner for a homeless woman I met on the streets of New York. What I didn't know was that this simple action would lead to a revelation that would change my life forever. The snow fell gently, covering the sidewalks in an icy white blanket. I was walking through the streets, feeling the cold seep into my bones, when I saw a woman sitting in a corner, wrapped in a tattered blanket. His face was marked by the harshness of life, but there was something in his eyes that caught my attention. I decided I couldn't let it pass without doing something. With my heart racing, I entered a restaurant ahead of me and ordered a special Christmas dinner. When I returned, I handed her the meal, and the gratitude I saw in her eyes was priceless. "Thank you, young man. You don't know how much this means to me," she said in a soft but emotional voice. Then something unexpected happened. As we talked, she mentioned a name that shocked me: my mother. She knew her. The homeless woman, who seemed so far from my reality, was someone who had stories about my childhood, about moments I had forgotten. The connection that formed in that instant was like an invisible thread, connecting our past and present in ways I could never have imagined. My name is Lucas, and a few years ago, I was a successful businessman. Life seemed perfect to me, but inside, I struggled with the shadows of a past that persisted in haunting me. The success and wealth I achieved did not fill the emptiness I felt. That night, when I looked at the woman, I realized that my life was full of superficialities. As we spoke, I couldn't help but reflect on my own traumas and how they shaped who I am. Her fight against adversity made me think about my own internal battles and how I had failed to value what really matters. During our conversation, the woman, who introduced herself as Clara, began to share her story. She had lost everything in a fire and had since struggled to find a place she could call home. His resilience was admirable, and with each word, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It was as if, by listening to their experiences, I was finally seeing life from a new perspective. "You know, Lucas," she said softly, "life is full of ups and downs. But each hardship brings with it a valuable lesson." His words echoed in my mind. I had been so focused on my success that I forgot what it truly meant to be human, the importance of connecting with others, and the beauty of sharing stories. That night, as the snow continued to fall, I realized that true wealth is not in material possessions, but in the experiences we have and the connections we make. The friendship that began so unexpectedly was changing the way I saw the world. Clara taught me that even in the most difficult situations, there is always light to be found. I returned home that night with a warm heart, not just from the meal I shared, but from the new perspective I had gained. The journey of self-discovery that Clara gave me was a gift I never expected to receive. And as I thought about my mother and the stories Clara had to tell, I realized that life is a tapestry of encounters and reunions, where each thread is important to the final image. The connection I made with Clara was just the beginning of a new journey, one that would lead me to discover not only the value of generosity, but also the importance of empathy and understanding. That Christmas would become a milestone in my life, not because of the party or the gifts, but because of the lesson I learned when opening my heart to the unknown. That Christmas Eve changed everything for me. As I walked the streets of New York, snow falling around me, little did I know how much my life was about to take an unexpected turn. Connecting with Clara not only made me rethink what was really important, but it also forced me to confront a number of issues that I had avoided for a long time. After our conversation, I returned home reflecting on Clara's words. For a moment, I felt lost in a sea of uncertainty. What did I really want from life? Did my success as an entrepreneur bring me happiness, or just a void that I had filled with material goods and social status? The questions echoed in my mind, and the more I thought, the more I realized that there was something deeply unsatisfactory in my life. Over the next few days, I tried to focus on my work, but I couldn't. My meetings became a burden, and conversations with coworkers felt banal and superficial. People around me continued to congratulate me on my success, but as I smiled and said, "Thank you," a growing sense of disconnection formed within me. Clara's words were embedded in my mind, and I wondered if, in the midst of all that brilliance, I had lost the essence of what it meant to live. What bothered me even more was the way my friends and colleagues began to notice my change. One of them, Paolo, a longtime friend and business partner, began to question my new perspective. "Lucas, you look different. What happened? You can't just abandon everything we've built because of a random conversation on the street." His words were like stabs, and I felt the pressure to justify my new worldview. "It's not that, Paolo. I just realized that there's more to life than just work and success," I replied, my voice wavering. He shook his head, clearly skeptical. "You're at a high point, Lucas. Don't throw all this away because of a homeless woman. Think about what you have to lose." The tension between us grew. My new feelings of empathy and connection to humanity seemed to be seen as weakness by someone who always values success above all else. This interaction made me feel even more insecure. Was I making a mistake in trying to open myself to new ideas and experiences? Doubt began to eat away at my confidence, and I found myself in a dilemma. Should I continue to fight for what I've always known, or should I take a risk and seek a new path, a path that could mean a fresh start? Meanwhile, my relationship with Clara deepened. I visited her often, bringing food and talking about life. She had a way of listening that made me feel at ease, like I could share my fears and insecurities without judgment. During one of these visits, I told her about the pressure I felt to maintain my successful image. "It's difficult, Clara. I feel like I'm at a crossroads and I don't know which path to choose." She looked at me with a wisdom that seemed beyond her situation. "Lucas, life is full of roads. Some are paved and easy to travel, others are bumpy and difficult. But it's the difficult roads that teach us the best lessons. You shouldn't be afraid to stray from the path everyone expects you to take." Her words resonated with me. Clara was right. I was so focused on maintaining an image that was imposed on me that I had forgotten the importance of being true to myself. But how could I do that? How could I meet the expectations of others and, at the same time, pursue a more meaningful life? The pressure was overwhelming, and insecurity settled in my heart. With each visit to Clara, I felt a mixture of hope and fear. She showed me that despite her situation, there was beauty in struggle and resilience. Her story was a powerful lesson about human dignity and the strength we find in times of adversity. But at the same time, I felt the shadow of my own insecurities following me. I wasn't sure if I was strong enough to make the change I wanted. Conversations with my friends also became more tense. Paolo and others began to question my commitment to the job. "You're moving away from what really matters, Lucas. The market waits for no one. If you don't act, everything you've achieved could disappear," he said in a meeting. My heart felt heavy hearing this, and I found myself torn between the search for a deeper purpose and the expectations of a career that had always been my priority. At home, at night, doubt consumed me. I looked in the mirror and saw a man who was not satisfied, even though he had everything that society considered success. Reflection became an internal conflict, and I wondered if it was really possible to start over in a world that valued materials so much. With each day that passed, the connection with Clara became stronger, and I realized that I needed to find a way to integrate these lessons into my life. Finally, one night, after a particularly difficult day, I decided I needed to talk to Clara. "I'm struggling, Clara. I feel like I'm in a maze, and every exit I find seems to lead to another wall." His answer was simple but powerful. "Life is a maze, Lucas. But you don't have to go through it alone. Sometimes, the answers we seek lie in connection with others." These words touched me deeply. I understood that although the journey was mine, I didn't need to face it in isolation. The friendship that was forming between us was a light in the darkness of my doubts. From that moment on, I decided that, regardless of external pressures, I would seek a path that resonates with my true self. And so, every day, I felt closer not only to Clara, but to myself. The following weeks were a real test for me. With the weight of doubt and insecurity hanging over my shoulders, I felt like I was navigating turbulent waters. Clara had become a safe haven, but the outside world continued to pressure me. Every interaction at work was an internal battle. Paolo and the others did not accept my new way of thinking well. It was like I was betraying everything we had built together. Paolo's skeptical gaze grew more intense every day, and his words echoed in my mind. You can't just abandon everything we've built. That morning, a crucial meeting was scheduled. It was the type of meeting that could define the future of our company. The pressure was unbearable, and I knew everyone expected the same determination from me as before. But as I prepared myself, Clara's image appeared in my mind, her soft voice reminding me that I didn't need to follow a path that didn't belong to me. The dilemma was growing inside me, and as I drove to the office, I felt my heart racing, torn between what I was and what they expected me to be. During the meeting, the tension was palpable. When it was my turn to speak, I realized my voice was shaking. We need to consider new approaches to our business. There is more to life than just numbers and profits, I began, but the reaction from my colleagues was immediate. The room fell silent, and soon Paolo intervened. Lucas, you're losing focus. We have to keep our vision focused on what really matters. His words were like a bucket of cold water. I knew he was right, but at the same time, I felt like I was missing out on something much more valuable. I left the meeting frustrated and discouraged. What did I really want? The truth is that with each passing day, my connection with Clara became deeper, but I also felt that my professional life was slipping through my hands. Conversations with my friends became increasingly difficult. There was an uneasiness between Paolo and me, which intensified with each meeting. He was frustrated, and I felt guilty for not living up to his expectations. It was as if we were on a battlefield, and the friendship that was once solid now seemed fragile. One night, after a particularly difficult day, I decided to visit Clara. I needed her. I sat on a bench in the park where we used to meet, and as soon as I saw her, a wave of relief washed over me. It was as if, upon entering his presence, all my worries were momentarily forgotten. I told her about the stresses I was facing, and her words were a balm to my soul. Lucas, sometimes we need to face the monsters inside us. What do you fear more? What others think or what you really feel? She had a way of asking questions that cut straight to the point. That question echoed in my mind like a bell. What did I fear most? The answer seemed clear, but at the same time, nebulous. In the following days, the pressure increased. Paolo began to openly question my commitment to the company, and I realized that the trust he had in me was fading. Small fights became more frequent, and tension crept into our relationship. He started ignoring me during meetings and turning his back whenever I tried to present a new idea. What was once a harmonious collaboration now felt like a competition. This change was reflected in my work. I couldn't concentrate, and results started to decline. In a moment of despair, what I feared came true. A major project he had led failed. The disappointment was crushing, and the guilt consumed me. I was called into the boardroom, where all eyes were on me. Paolo didn't miss the opportunity to highlight my failure. That project was your responsibility, Lucas. How can you justify that? He spoke with a tone of contempt that hit me like a blow. At that moment, I realized I was in a place where I no longer belonged. The pressure to be something I wasn't was destroying me. That night, I returned home feeling like I had lost everything. I looked in the mirror and no longer recognized the man who was there. The reflected image was of someone who had moved away from his essence. Clara's words reverberated in my mind. Life is full of roads. I felt like I was trapped in a maze, and the exit seemed further and further away. I decided I needed time to reflect. I went to the park where I used to meet Clara, and to my surprise, there she was. Her gentle gaze welcomed me, and I burst into tears, telling her about my failure and the pressure I felt. I feel like I'm losing my friends, my career, myself, I confessed. Clara listened in silence, and when she finally spoke, her words were full of compassion. Sometimes, Lucas, we need to lose something to find what really matters. Your worth is not in your achievements, but in who you are as a human being. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable. Those words were a watershed moment. I began to understand that in order to move forward, I would need to make choices that reflected my true essence, even if it meant giving up a part of myself that had been shaped by success and pressure. What did I really want? The answer was beginning to form in my mind, But there was still a long way to go. The path ahead was uncertain, but I was willing to walk a new road, even if it was full of potholes and challenges. After all, the true journey of life is made up of learning, and I was just beginning to explore what it really meant to live. That night, while the weight of disappointment still crushed me, I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. The project I had led, something I had invested so many hours and hopes into, had failed. Paolo's words echoed in my mind like a dark mantra. How can you justify this? The question wasn't just about the project, it was an accusation that was rooted in my own identity. I had lost myself, and now, the reality of my failure was staring me in the face. When I got home, loneliness enveloped me like a heavy blanket. Sitting on the couch, with the dim light in the living room illuminating just enough to see the walls, I was consumed by a wave of sadness. I looked around, and everything seemed so familiar and, at the same time, so far away. The life I built was falling apart, and I didn't know how to rebuild it. The idea of having to face Paolo again, the demands that would certainly come, made me even more distressed. The next morning, I decided I needed to go to the park. The place where Clara had heard me so many times seemed to be the only option I had to find some peace. When I arrived, the sun was still shy, and the gentle breeze ruffled the leaves of the trees. But instead of peace, I found only emptiness. I sat on a bench, and the silence of the place reflected the turmoil that was going on inside me. I felt like a shipwreck adrift, not knowing how to find my way back to dry land. It was then that Clara appeared. His smile lit up the room, and for a moment, all my worries seemed to melt away. But as soon as she got closer, the reality of my failure came back with a vengeance. I couldn't look into his eyes. I was afraid she would see the weakness I was trying to hide. When I finally managed to speak, the words came out in a shaky whisper. I failed, Clara. I'm not who I was anymore. She sat next to me, and the silence that followed was heavy but welcoming. Clara didn't say anything right away, and that gave me time to collect my thoughts. I entered this journey seeking an ideal of success that I created myself. I worked so hard, dedicated myself so much, and now it all seems in vain. Paolo doesn't trust me anymore, and I can't trust myself, I said, my voice breaking. Clara looked at the horizon, as if searching for the right words. Lucas, you need to understand that success is not only measured by results or external approvals. Sometimes life gives us setbacks so we can reflect on what really matters. You are not just a project or a responsibility. You're a person, and that is what counts. Her words sank into me, and for the first time, I began to deeply question what I truly valued. What did success mean to me? Was it just recognition and profits that I had pursued, or was there something deeper that I had overlooked? I began to realize that, even with all my achievements, there was a part of me that was suffocated, an essence that screamed for freedom. A part of me wanted to scream, to expose all the anguish I felt. Another part, however, felt grateful that Clara was there, reminding me of what really mattered. But what if I can't regain Paolo's trust? What if what we built together ends because of a failure? I said, insecurity showing in my voice. Clara turned to me, and her gaze was steady. What if you don't try? What if you keep hiding behind expectations that aren't yours? What do you have to lose? Life is made of mistakes and learning, Lucas. Failure is a fundamental part of growth. It doesn't define who you are. Those words echoed in my mind. I was so focused on pleasing others and maintaining an image that I had forgotten to listen to myself. What did I really want? What did I want for my future? The idea of starting again, of rebuilding from scratch, was not just terrifying, it was liberating. I needed to be authentic, even if it meant disappointing some around me. In the days that followed, I began to reflect on all of this. The conversation with Clara was a turning point. With each passing moment, I realized that I needed to find my own voice again. The pressure from Paolo and others was still there, but from that moment on, I was determined not to let it define who I was. I decided to face Paolo. I made an appointment with him, and my heart was racing. When I entered the room, I saw the skeptical look that had already become familiar. But instead of feeling intimidated, I felt a new determination. Paolo, I began, we need to talk. I realized that I'm getting lost in this incessant search for results. What really matters to me is creating an environment where everyone can thrive, and that starts with being honest about my flaws. He looked at me, surprised, and said nothing. The silence was heavy, but I continued. I know I made a mistake and that it affected the team, but I want to learn from this. I want to understand how we can do better together. My voice was steady, and I felt like I was finally starting to find myself. To my surprise, Paolo did not react angrily. Instead, he seemed to reflect on my words. The dialogue that followed was tense, but it was also a vital step towards rebuilding our relationship. I explained how I wanted to change the team dynamic, how I wanted everyone to feel valued and heard. And as I spoke, I realized that trust was beginning to be restored, not just between us, but also within me. The journey was still far from over, and I knew there would be challenges ahead. But with every step I took, I felt like I was finally coming home, to myself. And, most importantly, I understood that true success was not just about achieving goals, but about the connection I had with the people around me and with my own essence. Life was a journey, and I was learning to appreciate every turn and detour it offered me. After the conversation with Paolo, I felt as if I had taken a step towards a new life, but reality soon set in. The weight of what had happened was still present, and doubt settled in my mind again. With each passing day, I wondered if my decision to be more authentic would actually yield any positive results. The insecurities I thought I had left behind came back to haunt me, like ghosts that didn't want to leave. That night, as I looked out my apartment window, I saw the city lights twinkling. Life outside seemed to go on, indifferent to my internal turmoil. I remembered Clara and how she had encouraged me to be truthful. But the truth was complicated. I was so used to seeking approval from others that now, when I tried to be myself, I felt like I was doing everything wrong. I went to bed, but insomnia accompanied me. The hours dragged by, and I couldn't stop thinking about the consequences of my failure. The idea that my team might feel demotivated by my failure consumed me. I had created an environment of pressure, and now everyone could be filled with uncertainty about the future. How could I lead a team if I didn't know where to go? The next day I decided I needed to face this. I went to the office early, before the team arrived. I wanted to organize my thoughts and prepare an action plan. As I was writing down some ideas, the door slowly opened, and I saw Anna, one of my teammates, walk in. She seemed tense, and I could tell the situation affected us all. "Hi, Lucas," she said, hesitantly. "Can we talk?" The tone of his voice made me feel butterflies in my stomach. It was clear the team was feeling lost, as was I. Of course, I replied, trying to sound confident. "What is happening?" Anna sat in the chair across from me, and I could tell she was struggling to find the words. "I think everyone is a little worried about what happened. And, well, I'm worried about you too." The sincerity in his eyes touched something inside me. It was a reminder that I was not alone on this journey. I understand. I'm also worried. But more than that, I want the team to know that I'm willing to listen. I may have failed, but that doesn't mean we can't learn together. "What do you need from me?" I asked sincerely. Anna took a deep breath, and I could see the tension in her shoulders starting to ease. "We need a new plan, something that brings us together again. I feel like after failure, everyone is a little afraid to express ideas or even talk about how they feel. We need a safe space." Those words resonated with me. I had created an environment where the fear of making mistakes predominated, and now it was time to change that. We're having a meeting this afternoon, and I want everyone to have the opportunity to share their ideas. I want you to feel comfortable speaking up, even if it means criticizing what we've done so far. It's time to rebuild together. Anna smiled, and the sparkle in her eyes gave me new hope. "Thank you, Lucas. This means a lot to us." The meeting was scheduled, and as I prepared, the nervousness returned. I asked myself if I could truly create a safe space, if I could be the leader my team needed. But when I looked at Anna and thought about how she had opened up, I felt like I was on the right path. When the team gathered, the atmosphere was tense. Everyone seemed apprehensive, but I was determined to change that. I started by sharing my own insecurities and what I had learned from failure. I made mistakes, and it made me realize that we can't be afraid to talk about our failures. We need to learn from each other." Reactions were varied. Some looked at me suspiciously, but others began to open up. The conversation flowed better than I expected. Ricardo, one of the quieter members of the team, raised his hand and shared an idea he had been hesitant to express before. This triggered a series of discussions, and with each new contribution, I felt like the team was coming together again. As the meeting continued, I noticed that even with the difficulties, there was a growing warmth in the room. The collaboration song started playing, and ideas were flowing from everywhere. What had previously seemed like an unmotivated group was now beginning to vibrate with energy and creativity. It was a sign that change was happening. After the meeting, I went to Clara and shared how everything had unfolded. It was difficult, but I feel like we are on the right path. The team is starting to open up, and I can see that trust is slowly returning. Clara smiled, and I could see the joy in her eyes. "That's what you needed, Lucas." Sometimes vulnerability is the key to true connection. When you allow yourself to be human, it inspires others to do the same. Those words resonated with me. I had learned a valuable lesson. It wasn't just about regaining Paolo's trust or succeeding in a project. It was about being real, about creating a space where everyone could be their authentic self. The road was still long, and I knew there would be challenges ahead, but at least now I had a direction. I was starting to reconnect, not just with my team, but with myself. Every little step I took seemed to strengthen my resilience. Failure was not the end. It was a new chance to learn. And as I ventured into this new journey, I realized that by embracing my vulnerability, I was also making space for others to do the same. Life went on, and I was ready to face it head-on, one day at a time. The meeting was a watershed. As the voices began to rise, I felt a wave of relief and hope. I learned to listen carefully, to let each team member feel comfortable contributing. When an idea was presented, I made a point of valuing it, even if it seemed small or simple. What was once a space of fear and uncertainty was now beginning to transform into a welcoming environment. Ricardo, who had always been the most shy, had a moment of courage. He shared a proposal he had saved for a long time, and the way his voice shook as he spoke made me realize how much he needed this opportunity. "I think we can approach the project in a different way. Instead of just focusing on the numbers, how about we try to better understand what our users really need?" His idea lit a fire inside me. "That's brilliant, Ricardo. We can survey our users and understand their expectations. Let's work on this together." The positive response I gave him and the expressions of encouragement I saw on others' faces showed me that we were creating something new, something that was bigger than each of us. After that meeting, I felt lighter, but there was still a weight that needed to be lifted. When I got home, I sat on the porch and let the wind blow my thoughts. The truth is, I still struggled with the idea that failure meant weakness. But as I reflected, I realized that each failure had taught me something valuable. Through my mistake, I was learning to be a more empathetic, more human leader. Over the next few days, I adopted a new ritual. I started writing in a journal every night, exploring my fears and achievements for the day. It was a safe space where I could be honest with myself. One day I wrote, "I'm afraid I'm not good enough." But today, when I saw Ricardo open up, I realized that if I can create a space where people feel comfortable expressing their ideas, then, in some way, I'm doing something right. With each word, I felt like I was lifting some of the weight I was carrying. That week, I decided to do a different activity with the team. Instead of just working, I proposed a team-building day. We are going to get away from the office and do something out of the routine. We need to connect as people, not just as coworkers. The idea was met with enthusiasm, and I felt a surge of positive energy. On the day of the event, I took everyone to a park. We started with team games, where laughter and fun replaced the usual tension. I found myself laughing and joking, and I realized this was the first time in a long time that I was actually allowing myself to be lighthearted. At the end of the afternoon, we sat in a circle and each shared something that inspired them. The vulnerability was there, and I realized that by making space for others to speak, I was also allowing myself to be heard. After a moment of silence, Anna turned to me and said, "Lucas, you have really changed." Your willingness to listen and learn from our mistakes made all the difference. It makes us feel like we are part of something bigger. That phrase kept echoing in my mind. I wasn't just leading a team, I was building an environment where everyone could grow together. True success began to reveal itself. It wasn't about achieving goals or numbers, it was about the relationships we were building. When I returned home that night, I realized that life was richer than I had imagined. The meaningful conversations, the moments of vulnerability, and the new connections were what really mattered. The following week, when I met with Clara, she asked me how I felt. I feel like I'm finally finding my way. I am learning that true leadership comes from the ability to listen and learn, not just command. Clara smiled, and in her eyes I saw a gleam of pride. Lucas, you are becoming the person that has always been inside you. Keep it up. From that day on, I started to appreciate every little progress. Every time someone on the team shared an idea, I made a point of saying thank you. Each triumph, no matter how small, was a collective victory. I began to understand that vulnerability was not a sign of weakness, but a strength that brought people together. Over time, the team began to feel safer. Conversations flowed more easily, and ideas became bolder. The fear that once hung over us was dissipating, and in its place, new energy was emerging. I knew there were still challenges ahead, but as I looked at the team, I saw that I was not alone. We were on this journey together. And so, as the days passed, I continued to grow. With every step I took, my confidence in myself grew. I had learned to accept imperfections, both mine and others. And that, in itself, was a great achievement. The overcoming process that I had started was not just about a change in the way I led, but about an internal transformation that made me see the world differently. Life was complex, but now I was ready to face it with an open heart and a mind willing to learn. That morning, when I arrived at the office, I could feel something was different. There was a palpable energy in the air, but also a heaviness. The team was preparing for the presentation of our project, and although everyone was excited, I couldn't ignore the shadow of the previous failure. The last time we had presented something, the feedback had not been good. I remembered the disappointed expressions of our superiors and the pressure this had put on us. In the meeting room, everyone was focused, but I felt butterflies growing in my stomach. What if I failed again? What would happen to the team that had worked so hard? I looked at Ricardo, still a little shy, but now more confident. He gave me an encouraging smile. That little exchange reminded me of how much we had evolved together. But the doubt still persisted. When we started the presentation, I found myself speaking too quickly. The words came out of my mouth like an uncontrolled stream. We're here to show a new path, a user-centric approach. We believe this will make all the difference, but as he spoke, I noticed the tension in the room rising. The evaluator's expressions were indecipherable, and this only increased my nervousness. Soon, a question cut through the air. Why do you think this change will work when the last attempt was a failure? The tone of the voice was incisive, and I felt my heart race. It was the question I feared. The room fell silent, and all eyes turned to me. I could feel the pressure on my shoulders. What would I say now? I took a deep breath, trying to gather all my strength. What we learned from our previous failure made us rethink our approach. We understand that we cannot just focus on the numbers. We need to listen to our users and understand their true needs. The answer seemed weaker than I expected, and uncertainty still hung in the air. Ricardo, noticing the tension, decided to get up. Can I add more, Lucas? He seemed more determined than ever. We did a survey with our users. They told us they feel frustrated with our current product, and this motivated us to create something that really meets their expectations. His voice was firm, and as I watched him speak, I knew I was witnessing a moment of courage. That was the essence of what we had built together. With his support, the conversation flowed. Anna, also inspired, began sharing data we had collected, and the energy in the room began to shift. But even so, the pressure was still there. I knew everything could change quickly. If we didn't get approval, all our work, all the transformation we had experienced, could fall apart. The tension rose again when one of the evaluators asked a new question. What if you fail again? What would that mean for the team? His expression was serious, and I felt the question was a reflection of what I myself had feared. What did I have to say in response to that? It wasn't just a test for us, it was a question about our ability to move forward. If we fail, I began, voice a little firmer, we will learn from it. We won't give up. With each mistake, we become stronger. Every failure is an opportunity for growth. Saying this was like opening a door inside me. At that moment, I realized it wasn't just about the project, but about all of us. The team was by my side, and together we were stronger than I could have imagined. With each word we exchanged, trust grew. At the end of the presentation, we were all more connected, more united. I looked at the faces around me and felt a rush of gratitude. We had formed a team that not only worked together, but supported each other. When the meeting ended, the lead evaluator stood up and, to my surprise, smiled. I liked what I saw. I see potential in what you are proposing. The room erupted in applause, and I couldn't believe it. The weight that was on my shoulders began to lift. The feeling of relief and triumph was overwhelming. At that moment, I realized it wasn't just about winning or losing. I had overcome my fears and, most importantly, I had learned to trust my team and myself. The real victory was in how we had faced the challenges together, in how each of us had opened up and allowed ourselves to be vulnerable. I left the room with a light heart, knowing that the journey was still far from over. But instead of fearing the future, I was willing to embrace it. Life was made up of ups and downs, and now I understood that each of them had its own value. We were in this together, and that was what really mattered. As I left the meeting room, a wave of relief washed over me. The warmth of the applause still echoed in my mind, but I knew it wasn't just about approval of the project. What I really felt was an internal transformation. I looked at Ricardo, who was still surrounded by colleagues, sharing laughter and hugs. The sparkle in his eyes showed that he had also overcome something important today. Like me, he had faced his fears and been vulnerable. I decided to approach him. "You were amazing in there, you know," he said, with a genuine smile. He blushed slightly, but there was a gleam of pride in his eyes. I just said what we were all thinking. I felt it was time to act. Hearing this, I realized that our team wasn't just a group of colleagues. We were friends who supported each other. That connection filled me with gratitude. As we talked, Anna joined us. "You two were great. The way you handled the questions was inspiring." She had an infectious way of spreading optimism, and I admired her even more at that moment. "Yeah, I think we learned from our mistakes." "And that made us stronger," I replied, reflecting on everything we had been through. The failure of the last performance was still fresh in my mind, but now, instead of feeling discouraged, I saw how it had brought us together. As the day progressed, the atmosphere in the office was different. There was an air of celebration, but also of hope. The team began discussing new steps, new ideas, and the conversation flowed with renewed energy. I realized that the real victory was not just the approval of the project, but the resilience we developed together. Each of us had brought our weaknesses, and together those weaknesses turned into strengths. That night, as I drove home, I couldn't stop thinking about how everything had changed. The fear I felt before the performance seemed so far away. Instead, I was excited about the future. There was a new project ahead, and I was ready to face it head-on. I remembered the words I had said in the meeting, "With every mistake, we become stronger." Now, I really believe that. In the days that followed, the team began working on the new project with contagious energy. There was an atmosphere of collaboration that I had never experienced before. Meetings were more productive, ideas flowed freely, and mistakes were seen as learning opportunities, not defeats. I realized that my view of teamwork had changed. Mutual support has become a solid foundation for all of us. Ricardo, who was previously one of the shyest, now led discussions with confidence. Anna brought new ideas and working methods that made our process more efficient. I saw how everyone was growing and developing, and that made me extremely happy. The previous failure was now just a footnote in our story of overcoming. One afternoon, while we were drinking coffee, I decided to share my thoughts. "You know, I used to be afraid of failing. But now, I feel like every mistake is just a part of the process. And we're all in this together." Ricardo agreed, I feel that way too. What matters is that we learn and evolve. We cannot let fear paralyze us. Those words resonated deeply with me. The fear of failure had turned into a motivation to do better. I realized that true wealth was not just achieving goals or recognition, but the relationships we built and the ability to get up after each fall. Over time, our team not only delivered an approved project, but also formed bonds that extended beyond the workplace. We started meeting outside of the office, strengthening our friendships. The conversations became deeper and the laughter more frequent. I realized that the unexpected friendship that had formed between us had a significant impact on my personal development. Now, looking back, I see that fateful day in the boardroom was a watershed moment. He taught me that true success is learning from mistakes, embracing vulnerability, and leaning on others. Life is made up of ups and downs, and each of them brings a valuable lesson. The journey is still ongoing, but I am more prepared than ever to face whatever comes. After all, we are a team, and together, we can overcome any challenge. As I reflected on everything I had been through, I realized that this journey had changed me in ways I could never have imagined. Presentation day, which once felt like a time of shame and failure, was now a treasured memory that taught me about the power of vulnerability and the importance of connecting with others. Looking back, I realized that the fear I carried was just a reflection of my own insecurities. Every mistake, every hesitation, became an opportunity to grow, and that didn't just apply to work, but to my life as a whole. The impact of my transformation extended beyond myself. The friendships that were formed with Ricardo, Anna, and the other team members became a pillar of support in my life. Our meetings outside of the office, the deep conversations and laughter we shared were instrumental in reminding me that life is about connections. I learned to value these relationships and open up to the people around me. That group of colleagues became a true family, and each of them brought something unique to my life. Ricardo, for example, became a close friend. Conversations about work soon turned into discussions about our personal dreams and challenges. He inspired me to be bolder in my decisions, to pursue not only what was safe, but also what I was passionate about. His courage to expose himself and be vulnerable encouraged me to do the same. Over time, I realized that overcoming was not just about overcoming professional challenges, but also about embracing authenticity in our personal lives. Anna, on the other hand, taught me to see the positive side of things. Your infectious energy and unwavering optimism helped me change my perspective on challenges. I learned to laugh at myself and not take things so seriously. She showed me that every day is a new opportunity to learn and grow. Our conversations became a source of inspiration, and the way she looked at life made me realize that happiness often lies in the little things. As this new vision took hold in my life, I realized that true success was not measured by material achievements or professional recognition, but by the relationships we cultivated and the wisdom we gained along the way. I began to value more the time I spent with people, the importance of being present, and the beauty of sharing meaningful moments. The teamwork we experienced during that project wasn't just a temporary victory. It was a life lesson that I continued to apply in everything I did. With this new perspective, I also became a mentor to the younger ones on the team. Sharing my experience and hearing their stories helped me understand how everyone had their own journey of overcoming. Seeing others face their fears and challenges filled me with gratitude. I realized that, like me, everyone was looking for growth and learning. Helping others see their own potential became a mission that brought me joy and satisfaction. Now, as I look to the future, I feel like every step I've taken has brought me here. The journey that began with that tense day in the boardroom turned into a constant search for evolution and authenticity. As I reflect on the lessons I learned, I realize that each mistake became an opportunity to know myself better and connect more deeply with others. Furthermore, the friendships I built with my colleagues became even stronger over the years. What began as a professional collaboration evolved into a deep emotional bond. Our lives intertwined in ways I never could have imagined. We have supported each other through difficult times and celebrated achievements together, creating memories that we will cherish forever. Life is undoubtedly full of ups and downs, but now I approach each challenge with a new mindset. I learned to see vulnerability as a strength, failure as a springboard for growth, and friendship as one of life's greatest treasures. Every day is a new chance to learn, to love, and to live fully. I am excited for what the future holds because I know that no matter what challenges may arise, I am not alone. We have each other, and together, we are stronger. As I look at everything I have experienced, I feel a wave of gratitude. The journey I began with insecurities and fears has brought me here, to a place where I understand that the true value of life lies in the connections we form and the lessons we learn. I remember all the times I hesitated, that I let fear dominate my actions. Each of these experiences, which previously seemed like mistakes, are now milestones on my path. They taught me that failing is not the end, but rather an invitation to start over. Once, in a conversation with Anna, I said, I used to think I needed to have everything under control to be respected. She smiled and replied, and I used to think you were just a serious guy. Look how you've changed. That exchange is etched in my memory. I have really changed. I learned to see the beauty in imperfection, the importance of opening up and recognizing that we are all constantly evolving. Ricardo, always so encouraging, reminded me that success is not a straight line. Sometimes we need to take one step back to take 2 steps forward, he once said. This resonated deeply with me. I understood that success is not about accumulating achievements, but about how you feel about yourself and how you connect with others along the way. This new perspective helped me accept that it's okay to make mistakes as long as I learn from it. And the friendship I built with them? It's one of the greatest gifts life could give me. We experience moments of joy together and also face challenges. I remember a time when we were all discouraged by a project that wasn't going as we expected. We met in a cafe, and after some laughter and venting, we decided to take the situation lightly. That conversation not only revitalized our team spirit, but also solidified our bond. I learned that, in times of difficulty, it is human connection that makes us stronger. Over time, I realized that my journey was not just about me, but about how I could impact the lives of others. Becoming a mentor to new team members was an important step. When I see someone struggling, I remember myself and my insecurities. Every time I help someone find their voice or overcome a fear, I feel like I'm correcting a past mistake, the mistake of not believing that I, too, could make a difference. Now, when I look to the future, I no longer feel that paralyzing fear. Instead, there is genuine excitement. I look forward to the challenges ahead because I know I don't have to face them alone. Life is a series of ups and downs, and it is this dance between moments that shapes us. I learned that the true meaning of success is being able to look back and see not just victories, but the journey that led to them. And so, as I reflect on all of this, I realize that life is a continuous cycle of learning and growing. The mistakes I made are no longer sources of shame, but building blocks of my self-confidence. Today, I value every friendship, every meaningful conversation, and every laugh shared. These are the things that really matter. If you're going through a difficult time, I encourage you to embrace your vulnerability. Don't be afraid to open up to others. Talking about your experiences can not only help you feel better, but it can also inspire those around you. Share your battles, your victories, your lessons. You never know who might benefit from your words. Finally, I want to invite you to reflect on your own journey. What lessons have you learned? How have your experiences shaped who you are today? Leave a comment and share your story. I would love to hear about your achievements and challenges. And if you felt inspired by this journey, like this video and subscribe so we can continue exchanging experiences and learnings. Remember, every interaction counts and helps spread this message of hope and transformation. Let's go together, because the journey is richer when we walk it in community.